This is OFN NFL Preview on the Orlads Football Network. Week 8 in the NFL, Mark. And that's pretty much, we're getting close to the midway point, even though there are several teams because of COVID that still have a few more weeks to go. But we're sniffing the midway point.
Yes, we are as well, Greg. And when it comes to looking at trends in that Playbook magazine, you're going to have to move to a new box out of into the third section of the boxes for team trends and how they play from games 9 through games 12.
That's right.
So,
Yep.
exactly.
I've already started to do that on some of the teams. I've already X'd. I X the area, the box there, just so I know I officially move on. See, we could show everybody where that is right here. We just basically take this area here. See these areas here. So we take that and we X, and then we take that almost coming up here in the next week or two. Some teams I can X out already because I've already handicapped their games, and then we go there and there. But some teams are in this third quadrant right here. So anyway, that's just shows you as an indication that things are starting to get serious for playoff teams. We already have a few games that we're going to talk about today that, I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, teams now are in must-win mode, believe it or not, this early because they know time is running out. And then who knows if things wind up getting any worse and they have to cut some games. So you really have to start winning now if you're thinking about the playoffs.
You know, you mentioned must-win games, and that reminds me of a quote that Marv Levy once made, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, when they
Don't tell me every game is a must-win game.
No. They asked him if this is a must-win game, and he said no. Winning World War II was a must-win.
There you go. I like that a lot better.
It's all in perspective, yes.
That's right. All right, so Thursday night, we always take a quick look at the game that will start the week off tomorrow, Atlanta and Carolina. This is going to be interesting for me because this is going to kick off one of several games this week where I am going to go against all of the trends or most of the trends because most of the trends say to take Atlanta this week. And Carolina had their shot already as a favorite, and they didn't perform that well. But I look at that as a lesson learned. And there's no doubt Carolina's a better team. They beat Atlanta earlier this year. It's not easy to sweep. I get that. That's no doubt about that either. I just think Atlanta, after the way they lost again on Sunday, they got one win. You know, with the trade deadlines coming up. I just got to think that they're not focused. They're not focused on the game at hand. Nowhere near as focused as Carolina. I'm not saying they're not professional. I'm not saying they're not going to try. And I'm not saying that they definitely can't win. But I just got to believe that with Carolina feeling kind of good about their loss. I mean, they almost beat the Saints. They came a yard and a half short of sending that game to overtime. That this is a team that's feeling good about themselves. That, hey, we could still believe about the playoffs against another team that psychologically has to be shot.
Well, they do have to be shot. I mean, and Matt Patricia should be shot for, or not Matt Patricia from Detroit, but as he was Dan Quinn, and he was shot. He was gone. He's gone. And the bottom line to Atlanta here is, do they have anything left in the tank? Now, remember last year about the Atlanta Falcons and what they did after their horrible 1-7 start to the season in the second half of the season. They really kicked things in gear, basically because they were a football team that was really soured upon in Las Vegas. They didn't have injuries. It was all just due to really poor performance the first half. The talent was still there. Now, we'll see whether or not the talent is on hand for Atlanta. And I know we're not quite yet into that Game 8 situation that you're talking about, or the second half of the season, I should say. But this is an Atlanta football team here that is still a talented football team.
Sure.
Carolina, on the other hand, has played some really, really good football. Matt Rule probably should be in the running, or at least the talk, for Coach of the Year in the National Football League. Right.
Absolutely.
For what he inherited and what they're doing here right now.
He's a finalist, no question.
Yes, no question. He has to be in the talk. Teddy Bridgewater's done a terrific job since
Yep.
coming over. He's done a terrific job. So kudos to the Carolina Panthers and everything they've done. Now, the question is, can they get back up from that loss at New Orleans to take on Atlanta this week on a short week?
Yep. Yeah, Matt
So,
Rule hasn't had to deal with one of these weeks yet. That's always something that you have to keep in mind. Even though he's been a head coach in college, he's never had the short week NFL deal yet. So those are always tidbits you have to keep an eye on. And again, all the trends say Atlanta. They've covered 7 straight versus a division opponent off back-to-back straight-up losses. Carolina has dropped 5 straight spread games on Thursday Night Football, and I can go on and on about the trends that favor Atlanta. But like I said, I'm gonna say I think Carolina has at least another week left in them, especially because it is a national TV audience game. This is an opportunity for Matt Rule and the players who everybody thought they were going to have a terrible season to prove everybody, hey, we're a pretty good football team. And this is a big game for us. Even though there's not going to be 50,000 screaming fans out there, we know everybody's watching, and we're going to come out to play hard. So will Atlanta match Carolina's intensity? I think that's the key.
one thing that jumps out to me in this game, Greg, is the fact that Atlanta is only 3 plays away from being 4-3 this season.
Yep.
It's not like they played
Story of
like
the Falcons franchise.
Yes, not they haven't been performing like the New York Jets, okay?
No.
No, they've been in the games, they just found ways to lose them down the stretch like they did again last week when Todd Gurley had a brain fart and decided that maybe scoring was better for Todd Gurley's stats than it was for the Atlanta team effort.
He must not have watched the Penn State Indiana game the night before.
Or he must not have remembered Todd Gurley falling short of the end zone when he was supposed to a few years earlier than that.
Oh, that's
So,
right. I remember that because that was the one where all of the fantasy fans were screaming and yelling at him because they wanted him to score a touchdown.
for sure, for sure. And maybe not as many were yelling this past Sunday
No.
because he's not that popular of a fantasy player these days. But he was still there and he'd done that before. So who knows what happened? I mean, why he even put an effort forth. But, the bottom line is they still found another way to lose a football game late.
Yep.
And I'm going to ride on the fact that this football team is playing good enough football. As I mentioned, just 3 plays away from being 4-3. I'm going to take the points and imagine this scenario. If Atlanta scores real late in the football game and wins the football game, they'll ask them in the locker room what happened, and they'll say, "How about them apples?" They turn the situation around. So I'm not going to forecast that exactly, but I look for a big effort by Atlanta on Thursday.
Atlanta will host Denver next week, and then they'll have their bye, and then it pretty much we'll find out whether they can respond the way that they responded last year, because the bye comes at a pretty similar time from last year. Different coach, of course. There was all the talk of Atlanta fighting for Dan Quinn's job, and we'll find out whether or not they want to fight for Morris's job here. I just, I think it would take a miraculous turnaround for Atlanta, like almost like last year. And maybe even they'd have to, I don't even know if they could be better record wise, but they'd have to be so good over the next, 8, 9 games for Raheem Morris to have any shot, because I think Atlanta desperately wants to bring in an offensive coach.
For sure they do. It all started with Dan Quinn and his defensive philosophies to begin with. Dirk Cutter was not the answer from an offensive coordinator standpoint. So changes abound. They'll be coming for sure for Atlanta. We just don't know who that head coach is going to be just yet, but I think they're prepping for next season.
All right, now let's get to a big one. This is the big one of the week, Pittsburgh and Baltimore. And I have to say this, when I look at, this is one of those, this is definitely the week where I'm not going to go against, or the game I'm not going to go against the trends. But this is a game that before I even looked at the trends, I was leaning towards Pittsburgh. I like the fact that I can get 4 points with Pittsburgh in this game, because I do expect this game to be a close game. Could be a field goal game. So I feel comfortable that Pittsburgh can lose and I can still cover the game. And then I looked at the trends. And The trends in this matchup for Pittsburgh have got to be a finalist for best trends in a single game this season. They're amazingly good for Pittsburgh. So I'm sure you probably even have some that I don't have, because you could just, you have the trends coming out of the kitchen sink. So let's go here. Pittsburgh 8-2 against the spread. Their last 10 as a road dog. That's nothing about anything that I'm about to give you here. That's not even close. Here you go. Pittsburgh has covered 14 straight as a dog of less than 7 versus winning teams. That's right. 14 straight. And you know what? I got something better than that. Games 5 through 8. And again, that's that little thing that we were showing you here in the guide. That right there. Games, where is it? There you go. Games 5 through 8 right in there. Okay? Pittsburgh covered 17 straight off a straight up win when revenge has a play in it, which it does, and they're playing a team that is either 500 or better. And I'm not even done yet. The dog in the series has won 3 out of 5 straight up, 4-0-1 against the spread in those 5. And I still have more, Mark. Baltimore.
Go ahead.
7-14 against the spread in their last 21 as a home favorite. And I will end it here. Baltimore, 3-17 against the spread in their last 20 as division favorites off a non-division opponent versus a 500 team or better. That's a lot of good trends siding with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I liked the Steelers before I looked at the trends.
Well, there you go. So you're sold on this game. You're sold on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Doesn't it scare you, though, when you have all those trends working for you? It's almost like too good. I'm afraid it's too good. You gotta kind of give me, maybe, is it possible? Can you give me something to kind of calm myself and go, there are some things here, though, because I'd like to hear you say that so I can go, all right, well, maybe it's not so easy as it sounds.
Well, you got to remember this, Greg, that Baltimore is 28-13 to the spread against undefeated opponents. They'll come with everything they've got.
That's pretty impressive.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But that's where it stops.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
I can tell you this, that 6-0 teams in Game 7 of the National Football League season are 10-0 straight up at 8-2 to the spread the last 10 times when they've taken on a division opponent.
Wow, that's even more. I knew you had some extra in your back pocket.
We had to put a little cherry on that
yes.
On that Sunday there, yes. But I'm with you. I'm with Pittsburgh in the game. They're just too good of a team. Number 1 defense in the National Football League to be a dog like this. And let's talk apples to apples here as well. Baltimore is not hitting on all cylinders offensively this year. They haven't had a dominant football game. We saw dominant game after dominant game in last football season here, which led to Lamar Jackson winning the MVP because of the charge that he led in this football team. Something's amiss with him, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the game film that they saw from last year that better prepares them this year, but not quite sure. But this is a good football team they're playing here in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh, again, will come with everything they've got. There's no letdown for Pittsburgh here after beating Tennessee because this is a division game.
And let's also keep in mind that when Baltimore, they've been in this spot already as a short home favorite against a top AFC opponent. That was the Chiefs, and they didn't look so good in that matchup. Now, this is a different rivalry. I completely get that. But we already talked about the dog series. The dog in this series recently has done really well. That includes Pittsburgh as a dog. So it hasn't just been all Baltimore winning those as dogs or covering as dogs. The only thing I'm also a little bit concerned with is that almost like Pittsburgh, they've already got a game lead on Baltimore. Baltimore, it's their home game. So, I could probably see Baltimore winning this game. And if not, Pittsburgh will have a 2-game lead over Baltimore. Are they that good over Baltimore to have a 2-game lead? But I just, you can't look at it that way. You have to look at it, and this is just 1 week, and both teams want it bad. Big Ben play better than last week, though. I mean, he can't have 3 interceptions and keep. You can't win games when you're throwing 3 interceptions every week. They were fortunate to win last week doing that. And they held on to beat Tennessee, and it just does seem like Pittsburgh is getting better and better every week. But like you said, I agree. There is something about Baltimore. We've talked about their running game issues most of the season, and if they can't dominate running the football, they're just not going to be able to beat the better football teams, because this is a really good defensive Pittsburgh football team. That's what makes them a true Super Bowl contender, not Big Ben. This isn't the Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell days when they had a decent defense. And sure, a couple of, they'd have the Joey Porters at times and a few guys that would give them, Troy Polamalu and stuff. And they had some pretty good defenses for short stretches. But there were a lot of years where it was, especially recently, where it was the offense. It was all offense for Pittsburgh. But the last couple of years, they've been getting a lot better defensively. Dupree stepped up with Watt on the other side. They've got an excellent defensive line. The Fitzpatrick trade in the secondary. They are a complete football team.
Let me ask you this question. You alluded to the fact that Pittsburgh has a lead over Baltimore. Do you think a team that is sitting in first place in their division with a 1-game lead against today's opponent is going to toss in the towel?
Oh, no.
No way.
Not in this rivalry.
No. So there is no letdown here for Pittsburgh. Not even a thought of that from Pittsburgh. What does come out from Pittsburgh is they can look in the mirror and know that they have the better offense and they have the better defense. And they're the underdog.
Yes.
Okay.
That helps. Especially with Mike Tomlin. Tomlin's a hell of an underdog coach.
Yes,
they both are, actually, Harbaugh and Tomlin.
Yes.
That's why the dog has 4-0-1 against the spread the last 5 in this series. And when they play in Pittsburgh, if Baltimore's a 3.5 or 4-point dog, I might very well end up taking Baltimore. It's possible.
I could have looked this up and I didn't, but I do know this, that if you go back and you look at the scores in this series, there have been so many games that have been decided by 3 or fewer points. It's the most of any series of any of the 2 teams in the National Football League. Yes.
Well, that's even better when you got that. You can buy, again, if you want to buy the half point. If not, if you're comfortable with 3.5 in a 3-point game, that's fine too. I always buy the half point though, just in case. And hopefully it'll be a really good football game. It's unfortunate that the fans aren't there. That's the only thing. Pittsburgh though has a big benefit over, a clear advantage schedule-wise after this, because Pittsburgh, their next 3 games will be Dallas, Cincinnati, and Jacksonville. Baltimore's next 3 games, the Colts, the Patriots, and the Titans. And then these 2 teams play again. So if Baltimore does win and takes a 2-game lead with that schedule, those next 3 games, they might be able to open up a 3-game lead before they play them again.
Well, mark this down. If Pittsburgh wins this football game, those next 3 games that they have on deck against 3 sad sacks, I say they will not beat the spread more than once in those 3 games. They will play down to the level of that opposition. They'll be priced like they've never been priced before in Vegas because of their success and being undefeated. So you have to sometimes be a little bit contrarian in your approach. And when you're talking about teams on a red-hot run playing bad football teams, more times often than not, they will indeed play down to their level.
All right, let's now move on to key game number 2 this week, New England and Buffalo, AFC East. We would have figured just a few weeks ago that this would have been might have been the game of the week, like Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Not the case, because over the last couple of weeks, Cam Newton has decided to look like the bad Cam Newton. And the Buffalo Bills, even though they won last week, they've struggled a bit over the last several weeks. They were trailing at halftime to a winless team on a 2-game losing streak. So these teams are not playing their best football going up into this matchup. But this is going to be another one of those games that I mentioned at the top that I'm going to go against the trends. And that's because of the fact that there were a lot of good trends for the Patriots and Bill Belichick last week. And they just, that was about as bad as the Patriots have looked in 20 years. So I'm now getting suspicious of the trends with New England and Bill Belichick because Tom Brady's not there anymore. So that suspicion And you're going to give, I'm assuming, a lot of those big trends that favor the Patriots if you like them, because I've got the feeling you might. Uh, those trends again are some that I'm just going to have to. Okay, that was then. This is now. I am a little bit concerned with the psyche of the Bills being the favorite against big bad New England. There's no doubt about that, especially when they're not playing their best football. They are 2-0 straight up and against the spread as a home favorite this year. And again, the Patriots have lost their last three by a 77-28 margin. Keep in mind, both teams are 0-3 against the spread in their last three games.
Yep, they're both on a swirl, if you will. This Buffalo offense didn't score 20 points in any of those three games. So this offense is nothing to be fearful of if you're New England. And remember last year, New England led the National Football League in total team defense. They started out pretty well that way this year, but they've slipped a cotter pin or two. And they've kind of gone backwards here in this losing streak. Now, if I ran these numbers by you, tell me what I'm talking about. 94.6, 73.8, 51.6, and 39.7. Am I talking about the temperature in Denver over the past month? No, I'm talking about Cam Newton's quarterback rating, which has gone down every game progressively since he started with the New England Patriots. So there's obviously a problem here behind center for New England in the football game. Are we going to get, as you say, the old Cam, or are we going to get a reinvigorated Cam Newton in this football game? Or we may not even get a Cam Newton. We might see Jarrett Stidham, or we might see Brian Hoyer. But I think what you're going to see is a Bill Belichick game plan here to get himself out of a rare three-game losing streak in this football game. You got to go back. The last time they were 2-4 to start a season was the year 2000. That was his first year with New England, and that was also with Tom Brady. So he doesn't lose, as I mentioned here, too many times 4 football games in a row. And you can talk about the trends in this game till the cows come home, much like you mentioned in the Pittsburgh game, because you can pull out all of the Bill Belichick trends as a dog off a loss. Blah, 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 blah. But the one that does stand out is Bill Belichick as a dog off a loss. 21 times, he's won 15 of those games straight up and beat the spread 18 times. 10-0 when he's coming off a double-digit loss. So yes, they were supported by Tom Brady, who's no longer there right now. But again, they were still an architect of Bill Belichick in the plan. I'm not fearful of New England this week, and one main reason is Buffalo is not playing good football right now.
Yeah, that's the concern. Absolutely.
Yes, if they were, it would be a concern, and I would say that I would take those trends I just ran by you with a grain of salt. But I still see Bill Belichick dusting himself back up off the mat and getting into this football game. He's only been a dog 5 times in this series since he took over with New England. 5 times he's only been the dog. And the 5 times that Buffalo was favored, they went 1-4 straight up and against the spread.
Yep.
So can they handle this role? This is definitely a step-up game for Buffalo. I say let them prove it to me. I'm going to play New England plus the points here.
Yeah, I think that if New England wins this game, they're winning the game on defense. Period. There's just no way is Cam Newton going to turn it on Sunday. It's just not going to happen. He might slowly start to get a little bit better, but he's so bad right now that it's going to take time, and they need to start running the ball effectively again. And they must be in a position where the defense will keep them in the game so they can keep running the football. That's what didn't happen last week. They got all their offensive linemen back, but they couldn't use them the way that they did. And when they did use the linemen in the running game, they were successful, but they were just so far behind they couldn't do it. So the defense, and the reason I can see the defense keeping them in this week is because San Francisco, I was talking with Evan Lazar, who covers Pat's beat reporter. We do Pat's Probe every week. And he had talked even before the game about this being a bad matchup for the Patriots. San Francisco likes to play more physical, bully ball, and they have a lot of different electrifying players that they can get their hands on. The Bills are not as, they're not built offensively like San Francisco is. Yeah, they have Stephon Diggs, but they can't run the football the way San Francisco can. I mean, San Francisco, first and foremost, wants to run the football. Buffalo, if they could run the football, balance it out, that'd be nice. But they're more of a pass-first team. I mean, this is about Diggs and John Brown, who's been injured, and Josh Allen running all over the place. But if they can cause a couple of turnovers on Allen, which I could definitely see happening, and Buffalo's offense kind of plays like they have the last few weeks, and the Patriots defense keeps them in, yeah, I can see Patriots stealing a game when the offense still doesn't do a whole lot.
I'm 100% with you on this, and I'm going to go back to what you just mentioned and just confirm it, that it will be the New England defense that will win this football game. If Buffalo does not put 21 points on the scoreboard this week, like they haven't done the past 3 weeks, New England wins this game.
The Patriots have beaten the Bills 7 straight. They have beaten the Bills 8 straight in Buffalo. It might work to the Bills' advantage to not have any fans at the game, because it sure hasn't worked when the fans are at the game.
No, it hasn't, no.
All right. Let's move on to key game number 3. And that one is going to be Vegas and Cleveland. And this is one of those games that I don't have a lot of big trends to talk about, but it's such a big game. This is it for the Raiders pretty much, because when you take a look at the AFC, and it's a tough conference, and we've known that since this beginning of the season, the Raiders, if they have any chance, must beat Cleveland, because this is the team the Raiders will more than likely have to be challenging for the playoff spot, because we know it's going to be Pittsburgh, Baltimore. We know there's going to be the 3 other division winners. So that only leaves a couple more spots open as far as the wild card is concerned. And we kind of feel Tennessee and the Colts look pretty decent right now for that wild card. Whoever doesn't win the South looks pretty good so that this may be it. Vegas, knowing that we have to beat Cleveland. Cleveland could right now. I think when it's all set, I think if the season ended today, and I don't even want to talk, statistically speaking, but I think we would say, okay, yeah, Cleveland, they played good enough. They should be a playoff team, even if they were a 7 seed. Raiders know that's the 7 seed. That's the 6 seed. We have to win this football game. That doesn't mean they're going to win the game. And I am a little bit worried about the Raiders defense. We've been worried about their defense all season. Even when they beat the Chiefs, they get up a load of points. I expect this to be a pretty wide open football game. I just think that the Browns' momentum after the huge win, Baker's maybe his best win ever as a quarterback, that momentum might be too much for the Raiders to handle this week.
Yeah, that was basically a spectacular performance by Baker Mayfield last week. He opened up the game 0 for 5, and he had a pick. He then completed 20 consecutive passes in a row. And
you will never see Sam Darnold reacting that way. Never. No. When he goes 0 for 5 with a pick, game over.
Well, not Baker Mayfield, okay, because he's got bulldog determination in him, and it just lighted a fire underneath him. When that streak ended at 20, it only ended at 20 because he spiked the ball to stop the clock.
Yeah.
And what a fantastic finish. I mean, to throw the pass that he threw with 11 seconds remaining in the game, a 24-yard touchdown pass on the spot to a rookie, Donovan Peoples-Jones, was just spectacular. And I think the momentum is going to carry over for Cleveland in this football game. The Browns need a win like this. Right now, you mentioned about the playoffs. If the playoffs started this weekend, the Browns would be the number 6 seed right now in a playoff position. And I don't see them wanting to take last week's win and give it back here at home against Vegas, okay? I think you're going to get a focused effort. And I personally, Greg, feel that the loss of Odell Beckham is going to help the Cleveland Browns rather than hurt the Cleveland Browns. It's kind of a bizarre statement to make, but they play much more of a team football game. They don't have Odell Beckham whining, crying, bitching, and complaining all throughout the game and in the locker room. I think this is going to end up benefiting Cleveland in that sense. You got an Oakland Raider football team that's allowing 33 points a game. Only Dallas allows more points than do the Las Vegas Raiders. That's like San Diego and Los Angeles Chargers.
That's okay.
Oakland.
I prefer Oakland.
We're going to do that forever until our dying days, okay?
At least until they get some fans in the stadium and there's some identity in that what looks like a really nice new stadium.
Yeah, and when they get fans in the stadium, I would love to hear nothing more than massive chants of Vegas, 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 and drill that into our heads
That's
that we're
right.
watching the Vegas Raiders and not the Oakland Raiders. But I think here also on the AFC North road, they've really struggled. They're only 4-14 straight up,
Wow.
6-12 to the spread. I think it all adds up to another nice win for Cleveland, who, by the way, beats up unbeatable teams and really struggles against good quality teams. I think Cleveland gets the win and the cover in this game.
Mayfield is 3-0 straight up and against the spread at home versus teams off a straight up ATS loss. Both teams are in good shape schedule wise. So even if Vegas loses this game, look, they'll have a shot to get back into it. But I just think that chances still are that Cleveland might end up as the 7 seed. I think because they beat the Colts, maybe they get a tiebreaker. If they're tied, they can get the 6 seed when it's all said and done. But it's going to be, they're going to have to win almost every game. The good news is that 6 of the last 9 games for the Raiders are against losing teams. And for Cleveland, they get a bye next week. After that, Houston, Philly, Jacksonville. So that's good for Cleveland too. And if the Raiders are trying to play catch up against Cleveland, that ain't going to help the Raiders' cause. So this is it. This is it for the Raiders. And look, they're starting to play better. They're more than likely not a playoff team because of that defense. We've known that all season. That's the next step for the Raiders. They've got to improve the defense. And so far, they've done a good job of adding players on offense. And I have some faith that they know what they're doing and they'll figure it out. And I think, depending on their salary cap, I think that there'll be some players that'll probably enjoy signing with the Raiders. Why not? You're in Las Vegas. Hey, their money's fine. Why not play for John Gruden and an up-and-coming franchise? So I think that I see the Raiders as a clear playoff team for sure next year. But this year, the defense is just no good.
No, and they were all excited about this year opening up Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, but the stadium opened. It didn't really matter because of the COVID situation. So I'm with you. Next year, I think we'll see a different Vegas football team.
Okay, now here's a game that you probably are a little bit surprised that we're going to do, but we're going to do it because this is one of the games where I think that I don't know if I'm going to go with the outright upset. I might. But I do like the 6 points with the Cincinnati Bengals against Tennessee, and when you look at some of the trends, I think they're pretty decent as well. But what I really like about the Bengals is, and this matchup doesn't have to do with the trends, but just sort of like the eye test, the old age eye test, which is Tennessee. They played this emotional game against Buffalo. Then they had this crazy overtime game against Houston. Then they had this crazy loss against Pittsburgh last week. That was the 3rd game in 13 days that they played them. Even though they get the extra week here, it's still emotionally draining. And then you got to go play the Bengals. And I just think, look, it's just human nature. They've got to come down. They have to. And that should be enough in my mind for Cincinnati to cover this game. I also like the fact that the Bengals, even though they're 0-5-1 straight up as a dog this year, that's straight up. They have lost 4 of those 5 by a total of 15 points, and they're 4-0-1 against the spread as a single-digit dog this year. And meanwhile, Tennessee has 4 of their 5 wins won by just 12 points. One of them was won in overtime by 6 points. So you take that overtime 6 points away, and you have even a smaller winning margin. The combination of the fact that the Bengals play close losses and the Titans play close wins, it's a perfect. That's why I'm probably thinking maybe I don't have to worry. Maybe I'm gambling too much on the money line here. I'll play it safe and take the 6 points.
I'll go so far as to play the money line in the football game, Greg. I think this game has got tremendous letdown written all over it for Tennessee. As you mentioned here, the 2 games they come off of, beating Houston in overtime and the tough loss to Pittsburgh last week when they were down in that football game 27-7 and came within a whisker of sending it to overtime. but we're not able to do just that. Now they go on the road to play a lowly Cincinnati Bengal football team. This is where playing down to the level of opposition comes into play, and it comes into play in a big way. I mentioned here about Tennessee. They were 5-0. Now they're 5-1, and teams that were 5-0 and are now 5-1 in their next game when they're on the road, they're just 2-4 straight up and 1-5 against the spread. So that bubble bursts really occurs when these football teams hit the highway after that first loss of the season. You've got Cincinnati here at home, where they've been a really good football team when they're at home after losing at home the previous game. They're 11-5 straight up in this particular role, with only 3 losses by more than 6 points. So if you do the numbers, that makes them 13-3 to this number, Cincinnati, with all this letdown potential here. And I think the better quarterback is the underdog here, Joe Burrow, in the football game.
He's awesome.
Yes, he is. He's going to be.
And whoever's going to get Trevor Lawrence next year, he's going to be awesome too.
Yes, he is. So we have 2 superstar quarterbacks in back-to-back years coming out of this draft, provided Lawrence comes out. I think he sees the New York Jets, and he's having nightmares right now.
He's coming out.
Entertaining that thought.
Yeah.
But let's just say he gives him an ultimatum, much like Peyton Manning did. Was it Peyton or Eli Manning? Eli gave the ultimatum, and he ended up being traded. Okay, so if Trevor gives the Jets the ultimatum and ends up getting traded, we could see him in another uniform. But the truth is we got 2 great quarterbacks here. Joe Burrow, a superstar in the making, letdown written all over this game for Tennessee. I like the Bengals to win this game.
Yeah, Tennessee, because they have played down to the level of competition. Denver, 2-point win. Jacksonville, 3-point win. Minnesota, 1-point win. Houston, overtime win. So there you go. I mean, why not take the 6 points here and Cincinnati? And like you said, if you are looking for a money line play, there's no doubt this is a good one. And this is also the first road game for Tennessee since Minnesota in late September. By the way, Tennessee after this, Chicago, Indianapolis, Baltimore, Indianapolis, and Cleveland. It can get really tough for Tennessee after this. Cincinnati has a bye next week.
Yeah, that's a great stat about Tennessee hitting the road for the first time since September. It's a long time between September and what will be November when they play this football game. So you add it all up together here. This is a pretty solid handicap to the Cincinnati Bengals.
All right, the last big one is New Orleans and Chicago on our list, and the Saints are a 4-point favorite here. This is one of those where most of the trends favor the Saints, but as I said in the beginning, there were going to be a few games that I was going to go against the trends, and this is going to be another one. It's not that what is there to be excited about with the Bears offense? There isn't. But I'm looking at this in a different way. I'm looking at this as the Bears defense. And the defense has been fantastic this year. And I think, look, I don't know what's going on with Michael Thomas. I don't think anybody knows what's going on with Michael Thomas, and they've been able to get away with it. But you're playing one of the better defenses in the league now, and I don't think it's going to be so easy for the Saints to move the ball. They're going to have to probably rely on their defense in this one. I like the fact that the Bears are 12-4-1 against the spread. Their last 17 as a home dog. And because I am looking for a home dog or two every week, I kind of feel good that I can take the Bears. Look, say what you want about their team, mostly their offense, but they've won a handful of games as a dog this year, outright. So if I'm going to roll the dice on a dog this week, I think I'm picking a pretty good dog, getting those 4 points. They're about plus 180 on the money line. And the Saints are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games. And they've won 3 straight games this year by a total of 12 points. So whether or not you want to roll the dice like I am on the money line at plus 180 or take the 4 points, we kind of mentioned that with Pittsburgh, you can do that as well. But the trends do favor, the more of the trends do favor the Saints this week.
A lot of trends favor the Saints this particular week. And I can say this. I know you can't hear where I am in my office. You can't hear the sound that I hear right now. And that sound is Mitchell Trubisky warming up in the bullpen.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
Well, it's a scary thought, but he's there for a reason, and he's warming up for a reason. Since Nick Foles has taken over the Chicago football team, they have, in his 4 starts, they have not cracked 300 yards of offense. That can't continue. I
No,
mean,
and the running game has been atrocious. And
horrible.
I don't, with Trubisky in there or Foles in there, I just don't know how they're going to move the football if they can't run.
Exactly. And then you talk about this some trends in the series. New Orleans has dominated them. They beat them, won and covered 5 in a row in the
Yep.
series. Against the NFC North, New Orleans has really dominated the division. They're 15-5 to the number, 8-1-1 to the number away against the NFC North. This is a football game I don't see New Orleans getting away from them, and I think they're gonna end up pounding the ball on the ground and running it right down Chicago's throat in this football
Oh,
game. Yes,
I'd like to
yes,
see that. Okay.
yes. Which takes the onus off of Drew Brees and keeps the Chicago defense in the field a little bit more than they want to be in the football game. A shorter time of possession for Chicago. I don't think Nick Foles can do anything about it. I think New Orleans wins this football game comfortably.
This is also one of those games in the NFC that have a lot to do with who's going to make the playoffs. Because if the Bears really are thinking about, yeah, we can make the playoffs this year, well, they have to win this football game. Have to. Because you already have Tampa Bay and New Orleans. So both of those teams, if you're looking realistically at it, you're saying, okay, those are 2 playoff teams. We know Tampa Bay is getting to the playoffs. So it's a matter of, well, if you're Chicago, well, we've already beaten Tampa Bay. We have to win this football game if we're going to have a shot, because this is probably that team that we're going to be battling for that final playoff spot if Tampa Bay wins the division, and that tiebreaker doesn't help us because we beat the Bucs. So this is it. I think if Chicago loses this game, they're in big trouble. They got Tennessee on the road next week. By the way, New Orleans at Tampa Bay next week. So that's going to be the game of the week next week, and then they host San Francisco. But I still want to see what is going on with the Saints when and if they get Michael Thomas back, because they're not telling us everything.
No, there's a problem there, and it sounds like it's in the locker room, and he's demanding a trade. You don't go from being the best wide receiver in the National Football League and Drew Brees' #1 go-to guy to all of a sudden wanting to be traded. So there's a rift there, and I'm going to guess it's between him and Sean Payton. Whatever it happens to be, they're going to get along without Michael Thomas.
So
He
you
will
think it's one of those things where they're not risking any injury and they're going to try to make a trade for him, and that's why he's not playing, and we're not going to see him anymore in the Saint uniform?
You might have a point there. Maybe he feels he's ready to play, and New Orleans does not want to play him. And it could be for that reason, not to risk injury. It could be for the reason that they'd rather shop him than play him. It remains to be seen, but
Yeah, nobody knows. Yeah,
nobody knows for sure.
that would be crazy. Michael
Yeah,
Thomas getting traded.
yeah, it would be. Now you've seen some wild additions in the National Football League. A couple of them are absolutely head scratching. The first one, Le'Veon Bell going to the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then his cancer clone, Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I can't understand that at all.
Going to Tampa Bay. Why would you want to break up the harmony of a football team that's really in rhythm right now? They're mind blowing to me. Both of those signings are. So whether this ends up being a cancer in the locker room time, of which nobody has ever heard about that from Michael Thomas before in the past. No. So there's a rift here somewhere between him and somebody, management, the coaching staff, or whatever. But New Orleans will get along without him. They're doing it right now, and I don't see him being on this roster come playoff time.
Be interesting to find out what they would get for Thomas, because you're not going to get. Now, again, people did think that O'Brien got taken to the woodshed in the trade, but you're not going to get what you should get for Hopkins, because Thomas is a little older. That's just not going to happen. And I think people are going to go, unlike Hopkins, who I think most people believe he could be dynamic with anybody. I think people might question whether or not, is Michael Thomas really that good, or is he a good receiver who's lucky to have Drew Brees with him? I don't know if you get anywhere near the type of deal that you would, or value for Hopkins in a trade. And then you've got how much money he's making. So That's going to be interesting. That would be something else to see if Michael Thomas got traded before the deadline.
Well, one other interesting note when we're talking about the deadline coming up and the trades, down here in South Florida with Tua Tagovailoa getting his start this week, there's talk obviously of Ryan Fitzpatrick being shopped
Yes.
around to teams that are in need, like the Dallas Cowboys, who obviously
Yes.
need a quarterback. But I'm going to go so far as to say it's not going to happen. And for this reason, they will not get much for Ryan Fitzpatrick. At best, they'll only get a third day draft choice.
Then they're not getting rid of him.
Then they're not getting rid of him
Yeah.
because they need a backup for Tua
That's right.
Tagovailoa.
Yep.
Okay. So it's not going to benefit Miami to make that trade or make that move unless a
Nope.
team comes in and completely overwhelms them.
Yep. Has to be. I would think no worse than a third.
Exactly, a third round or better, or Miami's not going to listen. So I say with that, you'll find Ryan Fitzpatrick tutoring Tagovailoa till the end of the year.
And Seattle, I think, made a good move picking up Dunlap. I think we've even talked about it on this show that Seattle, if they're going to be a real Super Bowl contender, they had to add their pass rush. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't have to give up anything, basically, to get Dunlap. And throw in Snacks Harrison, who should be playing some snaps in the next week or two. They get Adams back. That was a really nice move by Seattle, a must move by Seattle.
Yeah, it was a real good move, and it also leads me to believe, just like Michael Thomas, what on earth is going on with Jadeveon Clowney? I mean,
yeah, he's been quiet. Yeah,
it sounds like he's the kind of a player who made all this money and became non-incentivized, and really doesn't have a desire to break out and play on the field here. He could have signed free agent contracts. The Cleveland Browns wanted him really bad in the offseason. It looked like he was headed that way, but it never happened because of a money situation. So Seattle couldn't even satisfy his need where he is there and knows the system. So, there's some strange goings on in the National Football League these days, and it's not all completely COVID related.
All right, quickly, let's finish the rest of the two primetime games. And I've got to say, I think this is going to end up as one of my top picks, and that's the Eagles and the Cowboys. And, I think for the first time in 15 years, we're going to get a back-to-back NFC East champ. I just think the Eagles are, and we talked about this when we thought that they could get Baltimore a run for their money, and they did. They've been getting better. They're getting a little bit healthier. It's a bad division. I think they're going to end up winning this division now. I like and even though they're a terrible home favorite, and we talked about it last week, and they lost the spread against the Giants, I don't really care about that because what I care about more is the Cowboys are 0-7 against the spread this year, and their locker room is a mess. They are not playing together at all. They're going to be playing this DiNucci kid who has no right being on an NFL football field right now, with all the problems going on, and they're playing a team that's the exact opposite. That even though they have injuries of their own, they're actually fighting hard and they're winning games and they're battling every week. I don't care. I have to give up 7 points. If the Eagles are going to cover a home game as a favorite, this is definitely one of those games they're going to cover.
I could not disagree. You're talking about a Dallas Cowboy football team that is the worst team in the league in net turnovers, minus 13 net for the season. That's a team that doesn't care or isn't interested or isn't focused.
Yep.
And I'm going to go also so far as to say you might find the Dallas Cowboys. You're going to be reading about this. I'm only speculating. They're going to be accused of tanking for Trevor. They didn't go out and make a quarterback move when all they've got is DiNucci, and they didn't make a quarterback move. They're not interested in winning football games, and there's only one reason at this point they would not be interested in winning football games. It's because Trevor Lawrence would come out to play for the Dallas Cowboys. It would alleviate them from having to settle the Dak Prescott issue, and they would feel renewed and recharged. So mark that down. You might not see a move being made by the Dallas Cowboys for another quarterback.
By the way, this is only the second time the Cowboys have been an underdog this year. How about that?
Wow.
As bad as they are.
Yep.
Tampa Bay, and look, this is another thing about the trends that I don't, I'm not gonna worry about, which is the fact that the Giants have covered 5 straight as double-digit home dogs, including winning 3 of those, because of the fact that the Giants are 1-12 against the spread in their last 13 as a home dog, including 0-2 this year, and Tom Brady and the Bucs are playing at an unbelievable level offensively and defensively right now. National TV audience. I'm giving 10 points. Come on. I mean, unless there's a backdoor cover of some kind, I don't think the Bucs are going to be, I don't think, I just can't see the Giants with a chance to win in the fourth quarter against Tampa Bay the way the Bucs are playing right now. So I have no problem giving 10. It's a lot of points, but I just don't have any problem giving it to them.
Well, I'm going to go the other way here, and I could see Tampa playing down to the level of the New York Giants, who, by the way, are 5-0 to the number as a double-digit home underdog. And you can also take a look at the fact that Monday night home dogs are 5-0 to the spread against teams coming off consecutive straight-up and ATS wins, Monday night double-digit home dogs.
Yep.
You've got Tampa just 1-5-1 to the spread in the series here. I don't know if they're going to come with everything they've got in this football game. You could end up seeing Tom Brady getting a little bit of rest in the fourth quarter of this football contest,
see that.
And that could create a backdoor situation for the Giants. So I'm gonna grab up the points of the Giants and hold my nose.
By the way, Tampa Bay, as we said with New Orleans, are taking on the Saints next week.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of a revenge look ahead possible scenario for the Bucs. All right, so as we wrap it up, I have to ask you about the big line with the Chiefs and the Jets. Historically speaking, it says you should take the dog. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know why anybody would want to wager on this game, to tell you the truth.
Well, what I certainly wouldn't do is I certainly wouldn't be laying the points in this football game, okay? If you go back and you look, and we call this out in the Playbook Football newsletter this week, that you're talking about a 20-point favorite in the National Football League. They don't happen all that often, but when they do, they just flat out suck against the spread in doing just that. 13 times a team has laid 20 or more points in the National Football League in my database since 1980. Those teams went just 4-9 against the spread, including 0-6 against the spread if they scored 34 or more points their previous game.
And what do those teams flat out do?
Well, they win the game.
No, okay. You said, what do those teams do? They suck.
Oh, they do. They do.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to get another "they suck" out of you. So
yeah, nobody's pulled an upset, and nobody's going to pull an upset here either. So again, sort of the theme this week might be a little bit going out on playing down to the level of opposition. We talked about Tennessee. We talked about perhaps Monday night, Tampa Bay doing just that, and I could see Kansas City playing down to the Jets level as well.
All right, Mark, playbook.com. That's the website to turn to. That's where you're going to find everything, including the weekly newsletter, the coffee club emails that come out every day, and everything else that's available. That's where you want to take them, to playbook.com.
That's terrific. You can sign up for all those newsletters and sign up for the coffee club. You'll hear from me every day. We'll have coffee together. Check it out, playbook.com.